mindfulness, the gateway to liberation. Mindfulness, Buddha said to all those around him, this practice, this capacity of mindfulness is the invitation to, is the doorway to liberation. There is nothing, I declare, more helpful than mindfulness, more liberating. And I remember John Kabat-Zinn, my good friend and colleague, years ago when he started mindfulness-based stress reduction in the basement of the medical school in Massachusetts. He went to grand rounds and he said, give me your worst patients. Give me the ones that surgery and medicines and things can't help you, don't know what to do with, intractable pain, chronic this and that. Send them down to me, I'll take care of them. Because, as he said to me, a little aside, he wouldn't have said this because he's there's a lot of humility. But he said, I knew I had the biggest medicine of all. I had the medicine of mindfulness itself, the big guns, which allows whoever comes to see things the way they are and to find a freedom no matter what their circumstance. It's a completely different kind of medicine. And this is the medicine of mindfulness. And then mindfulness in the factors of enlightenment is joined by Dhammavichaya, investigation, this beautiful quality of seeing for yourself. Because the Buddha's enlightenment, as it said, was good for him. But you have to become the Buddha. A man who'd studied much in the schools of wisdom finally died in the fullness of time and found himself at the gates of eternity. An angel of light approached him and said, "Go no further, O mortal, until you've proven to me your worthiness to enter into paradise." But the man answered, "Just a minute now. First of all, can you prove to me this is a real heaven and not just the wishful fantasy of my disordered mind undergoing death?" And before the angel could reply, a voice from inside the gates shouted, "Let him in. He's one of us." And so conjoined with mindfulness is this extraordinary capacity to see what's true for yourself, to inquire, to discover. Suffering, its causes, its end, you know for yourself. But it also requires the next factor of enlightenment, of energy or effort. And I remember a person on retreat, a man coming, who'd suffered a lot. He had very bad chronic pain. He had a degenerative disease where his bones and joints were falling apart. His father had Alzheimer's and he was trying to take care of his father. His sister had lost her job, was unemployed and living with him. And he would sit with all this stuff. And he said, "You know what helped me?" He said, "I would sit and I would just hear this voice inside that said, 'Courage, courage.'" And the effort or energy that's required in this practice is really simple. It's the effort or the energy to be present for what actually is, the courage to be present. And when I was in Palestine, with all these things that are happening in the Arab world, a couple of years ago, visiting and working with some of the peace groups that I met there, there's that huge and rather terrible wall between Israel and Palestine that often goes into the olive groves and divides the Palestinian villages and so forth. The security wall looks like San Quentin. It's 20 feet high. Terrible. And on the Palestinian side, there's a lot of graffiti. One place where the olive grove was cut down and the wall, cut these people off. The children grew these huge paintings of the olive grove and said, "You can cut down the trees, but we know the trees are there still. The trees are still in our heart," or something like that in Arabic. It's beautiful. Anyway, to me, one of the most moving images was this 15 or 20 foot high image of the bird of peace, the peace dove with a little olive branch in his mouth. He's quite large. You can see the car down in the corner here of the picture. But the thing that's interesting about this dove is that he's wearing a flak jacket. He's wearing a bulletproof vest, And this is really the picture of the courage to sit here and say, yes, this too, and still continue to do it. The right energy or effort, not to make something happen, but to be present. And then there's rapture and joy, because we can get into the practice and spiritual life as a grim duty, and some of you, I know this, are quite loyal to your suffering. And it's okay, you have that relationship, but it's not what liberates. We need to meet it, bow to it, honor it, and so forth. This from Alice Walker. She writes, I think it pisses God off if you walk by the color purple in a field somewhere and don't notice it. People think pleasing God is all God cares about, but any fool living in the world can see it's always trying to please us back. And there is something about allowing joy, allowing beauty, allowing well-being and rapture and happiness, and we'll talk more about it, to grow in you, that brings awakening.